lined up. 54, 55, 56, 57 of chapter 18 of the Bhagwad Gita, Moksha Sannyas Yoga, or the Yoga of Liberation through Renunciation. Start with verse number 54. ब्रह्मभूत प्रसन्नात्मा न शोचति न काङ्क्षति समः सर्वेषु भूतेषु मद्भक्तिं लभते param. So the verse translates to becoming Brahman, blissful in self, neither grieving nor desiring, alike towards all beings, one attains supreme devotion to me. So let's take this up word by word. Brahma Bhoot. So becoming Brahma. Bhoot is actually something which is existing, which exists. So here in this context, it becomes become Brahman, Prasannatma. That means one is happy uh, in with oneself and through ourselves with our essence, that Paramatman. Na not shochati, when you are in shock or grief, so does not grieve. Na not kangshati, so you don't have desire. Samaha, balanced, equal. Sarveshu, all. Bhuteshu, beings. Mad bhaktim. So mad, now Paramatman is talking, Lord is talking from the level of the pure consciousness. So mad means God. Bhaktim, devotion. So mad bhaktim becomes devotion to me. Labhate, what we obtain. Param, supreme. So the verse translates to becoming Brahman, blissful in self, neither grieving nor desiring, alike towards all beings, one attains supreme devotion to me. So let's chant it together. Brahmabhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati समः सर्वेषु भूतेषु मद्भक्तिं लभते param. So now, as we come to the closing verses of the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the practices of Karma Yoga, or the path of action at the level of the body, the Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion at the level of the mind, and the Gyan Yoga or the Buddhi Yoga, path of knowledge or the path of intellect at the level of the intellect, have been covered in detail, and we have also read and analyzed how they help us in our own purification. So now, so far in the previous set of verses, we have talked about actually Karma Yoga and previous verses of this chapter immediately preceding. So we have talked about Karma Yoga and Buddhi Yoga or Gyan Yoga. Through these two practices, the seeker liquidates one's ego. We give up our ego and its various manifestations, in the form of desires and egocentric desires and selfishness, which also manifests finally as power, pride, lust, passion, and possessiveness. So, this has been removed from our personality or overcome to a major extent. So, consequently, the seeker is at a greater peace with oneself, and the confusions are removed within the personality, within the seeker, and the goal is set. The seeker is now seeking ultimately in and through all the activities in the world that Paramatman. So the goal is set, the vasanas, desires are under control, the mind is free. So the next stage is becoming one with that Paramatman. And this is through devotion or steady contemplation. So, and of course, this we have also been talking about, that why devotion is very important is because we are trying to reach the in infinite through our finite equipment, right? So this is the final stage which the seeker is at, and this is what the seeker is trying to attain. Already the connection with the God through the Atman, through oneself, the person is content and happy and blissful, and is really not reacting to the world outside. Consequently, the person does not grieve over past sorrows, and is not anxious about the future or desires for the future. It has desires for future enjoyments. The seeker sees that God, Paramatman, pervading, encompassing everything, and all beings are in that entire creation. So, in this kind of a state where everything is a manifestation of God, so the entire creation is at par. There are no favorites, and there's nothing to be despised or hated. The individual, the seeker, is entrenched in that oneness principle, and everyone is treated as equal. So, actually, what is happening is that the person has raised himself or herself to a higher plane of consciousness and is viewing things from that level. The seeker has come closer to that Paramatman, the supreme reality, through supreme devotion to that Paramatman. And this enables the seeker to merge with God, and actually, then once you have reached the goal, I mean, so you are God. So that is the state. We are at this final level of seeking. Now, the values that we just revised, that were presented in verses 51, 52, and 53, those values, coupled with supreme devotion, actually help us attain that escape velocity which helps us get beyond the traction of the world and launch into our final merger with Brahman. So, the divine qualities that we recapped in verses 51, 52, and 53 qualify the spiritual seeker to attain that state of Brahman. So, that is what this verse is saying. It's just like, when if you try to appear for a postgraduate examination, you have to show your previous degrees. If you are only class 10 pass, you will not be allowed to sit for a postgraduate exam. You have to show your next set, two sets of degrees, right? So, similarly, when these qualities have been imbibed in our personality, then we qualify to become, to reach that Brahman. That is our qualification. So, they qualify the spiritual seeker to reach that final state of Brahman, or provide us with complete liberation. And that is what the chapter is talking about, right? That is the name of this chapter. And here, before we move on to the next verse, I would like to quote two verses of Ishupanishad 6 and 7, which talk of the same thing. What is being said in this verse and the next verse, actually. So, the verses of Ishupanishad 6 and 7 read, Bhuta Nyat Manne Vanu Pashyati Sarva Bhuteshu Chatmana Tatona Viju Gupsate. So, once you view everyone in the same, under the oneness principle, so in that state, when you see that God in all the creatures, you don't detest anyone. That is verse number 6. Yasmin sarvani bhuta nya mat vabhud vijanatah tatra ko moh kah shok ek tav manu pashyata. That means when you see the entire creation as a manifestation of me, then tatra ko moh kah. So what is attachment and shok, grief to that person, a person, everything? He views the entire humanity and entire creation as one. So that was verse number 54. Let's move on to verse number 55. भक्तया मामभिजानाति यव्यान्याश्च मे तत्त्वतः ततो मां तत्त्वतो ज्ञात्वा विशते तदन्तरम्. So the verse translates to, by devotion, one knows me in essence, what and who I am. Then, knowing me in essence, one forthwith enters that. So let's take this up word by word. Bhaktaya. So bhakti is devotion. Bhaktaya becomes by devotion. Mam, me, God. Abhijanati, knows. Yavan, what? Yaha, who. Cha, and. Asmi, so am. So God am. Is. Tatvataha, in essence, in tattva, in essence. Tataha, then. Mam, me. Tatvataha, in essence. Gyatva, having known. Vishate, enters. Tat, that, forthwith. And antaram is when you enter forthwith, right? So by devotion, one knows me in essence, what and who I am. Then, knowing me in essence, one forthwith enters that, right? So let's chant it together. भक्तया मामभिजानाति यावान्याश्च मे तत्त्वतः ततो मां तत्त्वतो ज्ञात्वा विशते तदन्तरम्. So we are talking of devotion. And first, let's just talk about what are they? What is devotion? We had a whole chapter on devotion, chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga. But devotion essentially is love. So, devotion and love actually represent the same emotion. And both these love and devotion actually means completely identifying with your object of devotion or object of love. The only difference is that affection towards peers and juniors is called love, whereas towards a higher uh, person or an object or a guru or God is called devotion. That is the difference. So, love is the degree of identification that we have towards or with an object or thing. It helps us understand that person and also to relate with that person. So, see, a mother is able to understand the child and the child's baby's requirements. Similarly, a teacher or a guru is able to understand the disciple and is able to understand the disciple's requirements, right? Now, devotion towards a higher person or goal similarly enables the seeker to understand that uh, object, that higher object or goal. Now, devotion actually arises, has its foundation in faith that we place in a person, in a teacher, or even a child places in the mother, and of course in God. So, two examples that you may like to think about or which come out very strongly are the child having faith in the mother. So, even if the mother is hitting the child has faith. When the child is not able to walk and the mother helps out, the child, enables the child to take a few steps. The child has faith that the mother has the child's interests, good interests in her heart. Another example is when we go for a medical procedure. So we have faith in the doctor. We trust the doctor. We have faith that with his capabilities and his qualifications and his reputation and what I know, whatever little I know, he or she will be able to conduct the right procedure on me. The doctors these days explain to you in detail what they are going to do on you, but I may or may not comprehend. But I have faith that whatever the doctor is saying and is advising me to do and will is in my interest. So, this is faith. This is also an example of faith. So, faith is a deep trust or belief, often unseen or unproven. So, devotion actually is a loving commitment and dedication that stems from this faith that we place in the object of our, uh, almost worship. And this devotion, therefore, is expressed through consistent practice, service, and heartfelt connection to the object of our belief. So, to that extent, faith is the foundation and devotion is the expression, right? So, faith or trust is the foundation and devotion is the expression of that love. Now, in case of understanding and reaching God, faith and devotion both are important because, as I just mentioned, our equipments are limited. We can see, the light waves, or we can that reach us are the and that which our brain can comprehend are in a particular range of wavelength. Right beyond that, we can't hear, we cannot see. Dogs, for example, they can hear higher frequencies of sound waves. So now we are limited to that extent by our physical limitations. And through this limited equipment, we are trying to understand that infinite, which is omniscient, omnipotent, all knowing, all pervading. So it is a challenge because through a finite or equipment or through finiteness, we are trying to get to infinity. And if you remember, when we were doing chapter 11, which was the, anyone recollects the name of the chapter? Chapter 11?
Yes, give me a minute. I'm all ready for your questions today.
Okay, good, Sonia. That's nice.
Vishwarup Darshan Yog.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the vision of the cosmic form, right? So the vision, that vision of Lord Krishna, only two people saw that vision, right? Vishwarup Darshan Yoga, right?
And Arjun.
One was Arjun. Who was the second?
Sanjay.
Sanjaya, because actually Sanjaya throughout the Mahabharat, the war, he had been given the divine vision, and Arjun for that particular part was given the divine vision by the Lord. You see, so even to view what the Lord wanted them to see, they were given that divine vision. So, divine eye or the divine vision means a vision beyond the material perception. So it was only by the granting of the divine vision, which was given by the Lord Himself, that they were able to see His form. And not only physically the ability to see, but also actually it implied that even the mind and the intellect was given the capability to comprehend that divinity. And if you recollect, at the end of that chapter, Krishna says that Arjun tells Lord Krishna that it's okay, you just come back to your normal form, because he couldn't take it anymore, right? So it is, the import of that chapter is that only when we are equipped with divine senses, mind, and intellect, and the grace of God, because all that is given to us by the grace of by God Himself, can we see the divine majestic opulence, even think of it or comprehend it. And this is at the vision level of just the Paramatman. Okay, so we can comprehend at least to some extent that what all we need in order to know that Paramatman. In essence, tatvata is the word that is being used here in this verse. So some of the attributes that we have been reading about of that uh, are imperishable, indefinable, unmanifest, omnipresent, unthinkable, unchanging, immovable, and eternal. So all those chapters, chapter 8 especially, that Akshar Brahma Yoga. So this, what are the scriptures doing? The scriptures are giving us a direction, but we still don't know what that is. They point, what the scriptures are telling us, they're pointing to God, and they are making us. So when you use terms like, indefinable or unmanifest or omnipresent, so the scriptures are telling us it is beyond our understanding. Because when you cannot think of anything, of an object, how do we comprehend of that? Because thinking is confined to the objects of thoughts. The pure consciousness, which is unmanifest, cannot be thought of, is unthinkable or beyond comprehension. So, that state we are only able to comprehend when we reach the level of pure consciousness. So, it is only with the oneness principle that we are talking about, when we see oneness through the entire creation, that we are able to comprehend the vastness of that Paramatman. And this, coupled with faith and devotion, we can penetrate the last bit of the final merger. And because it is only then that we can aim to understand who am I, who that Paramatman is, and you know howsoever that Paramatman we are trying to reach, all these terms that we are using, it's all the same, right? So it is, the faith is very important because it is an unshaken belief in a possibility that I cannot logically explain today, right? It, in our context, it is taking this knowledge which the scriptures are giving us and making it our own, internalizing it, or and then building on that education. So it's self education. So see, even when we talk about the contemporary physics, or when we talk about quantum physics, which a lot of research and most of the Nobel prizes are going in this field of late also, right? So they, this Western physicists could not understand what the Vedas are saying. Now when we they are coming to the borderline of quantum physics with that final energy, they say, okay, this is what was being said by the ancient Indian scientists or the rishis, right? So when we come to self education, we have to listen, study, reflect on what is being said, absorb, and then implement it in our personality, which will lead to transformation of our personality. And here I would like to bring about that pole vault example that we discussed, I think in chapters 3, 4, and 5. And even otherwise, we have been talking off and on about it. So what happens, that is, pole vaulting is a sport where the bar that the pole vaulter athlete has to cross is several meters the person's height. And if you were to observe and say that that he has to cross that height, is the, how is that possible? Okay, with this, with the help of this pole. Okay, but when you see it happen, then you realize, okay, this is how it works. So in that pole vault example, what happens is that no pole vaulter can cross the bar without the pole. You have to use the pole to cross over to the other side of the bar, several meters your height. And at the same time, interestingly, you cannot also cross it with the pole. You can't take the pole to the next side, to the other side. You will, it'll be a foul. You will hit the bar at the right spot. This is where our discrimination in our studies comes at the right spot. The pole vaulter has to let go of the pole stays this side of the bar, and the person crosses over. So, similarly, the three practices that we are talking about, the Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga, help us to understand the right time for our final leap. The time, it'll vary from person to person. At that moment of final leap, we know a sense of that essential reality, and then we reach it. It's like the river which maintains its own identity as Bhagirathi and Alaknanda, Ganges, till the time they reach the Bay of Bengal, they all merge into the ocean. And Lord Krishna has been talking about Bhagwad Gita in all the chapters that we have read. He is saying that he is there as that Paramatman in all the beings. And when he's talking as me, as today's verses are talking about, means he's talking from the level of the pure consciousness. And with that, let us move to the next verse. Verse number 57. No, sorry, 56, right? 54, 56, yeah. सर्वकर्माण्यपि सदा कुर्वाणो मद्वपाश्रयाः मत्प्रसादादावाप्नोति शाश्वतं पदमव्ययम्. So the verse translates to performing actions always taking refuge in me. By my grace, one reaches the eternal, indestructible abode. So let's take this up word by word. Sarv karmani. So sarv is all, karmani is actions. So all actions. Api also, sada always. Kurvanah doing. Mad apyashreh. So ashreh is when you take refuge in that Paramatman, taking refuge in me. Mad prasadat. By my grace, when my prasad. Okay, so my grace. Avapnoti obtains. Shashwatam is what is eternal, was always there, is there today, will always be there. Padam is my abode. Avyayam is indestructible. So the verse translates to performing actions, always taking refuge in me. By my grace, one reaches the eternal, indestructible abode. Let's chant it together. सर्वकर्माण्यपि सदा कुर्वाणो मद्वपाश्रयः मत्प्रसादाद्वाप्नोति शाश्वतं पदम् अव्ययम्. So now let's see how the chapter is progressing. The last part of the chapter, we covered Karma Yoga in verses 46, 47, 48, and 49. Actually, we revised the Karma Yoga. It was covered in detail in the earlier chapters. But 46 to 49 verses of this chapter again revised the Karma Yoga with us. And then we talked about the Jnana Yoga, which were verses 51, 52, and 53, what we did last week. Today, what we have just finished, 54 and 55, are actually talking about devotion or the Bhakti Yoga. So, through these three practices, the seeker is purified and bulk of the vasanas fall away. And the purified mind is now available for meditation on God. And of course, the oneness principle is understood by the seeker. So, the seeker sees the entire creation as manifestation of God. But the seeker continues with the obligatory duties in the world. Now, this is the important part. To that extent, the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, since the second chapter, if we leave aside chapter 1, which was Arjun Vishad Yoga, or the yoga of Arjun's despondency, which was actually, he had put down his weapons. But when the discourse by the Lord starts, it has been always talking about dynamism, about action. So, Gita, to that extent, is not promoting withdrawal from the world of sense objects. The point is that after perfecting ourselves with the three disciplines of Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga, it is directing us to come back into the world and to perform one's uh, obligatory duties, what is required to be done to the best of our capabilities. The only rider that repeatedly we are reading, which Lord Krishna is trying to tell Arjun, is that we have to think of that Paramatman in and through all our duties, all our activities, 24 by 7. So, Lord Krishna is directing through Arjun people like us, seekers, to surrender our minds to that Paramatman as we perform our actions in the world, and to see all these duties in the world as devotional service to the Paramatman. So, we don't have to sit and sing bhajans, let's say, for half an hour daily and think that our part of devotion is over. You want to do it, you do it, fine. It helps you shed off your vasanas, whatever is remaining, that's a different thing. The point is that 24 by 7, we should be attuned to that Paramatman, to that Tanpura. Just as in our example, the musician is always conscious of that the Tanpura is playing Sa and Pa, and when I hit that note, I have to come back to that. So that consciousness should always be attuned. Our consciousness should be attuned to that Paramatman. And therefore, through these verses, Lord Krishna is advising seekers to work for His sake, for Paramatman's sake. That means orienting all activities with the Lord. So even when we are cooking, cutting vegetables, gardening, we should be thinking of that Paramatman, doing all our duties well and to the best of our abilities, working in the office, teaching our children. So everything is to be done to the best of our abilities, but attuned to the Paramatman. So working for His sake, for God's sake. So surrendering everything to God, function according to His will, for Paramatman, understanding how Paramatman is enabling me. I mean, so even a simple act when I am talking and you are listening and we are using this technology, the fact that we can use the technology, the fact that I'm able to speak so that you are able to comprehend. And all those sound waves and words go to the brains, to the mind, and make sense out of what is being said. So it's a wonder, actually. We take it for granted, but it is a wonder that I'm able to conceive, perceive, understand, comprehend, and formulate a response into the world. So when we have the question answer session, there are questions which I'm able to hear, I'm able to comprehend. The same cycle repeats with me. So this is how that Paramatman is enabling us. And at the same time, be accepting of whatever comes our way. So we do all our actions for God and dedicate it to Him. So even when you get angry, it's something you should not have be doing, and you get over it, dedicate it to Paramatman. It's okay, and and then you'll become more cautious the next time you lose your temper. So such a seeker will gain perfection and attain Him as Mat Prasada, His grace. Now, what we are saying in this set of verses actually has been said repeatedly in the Bhagwad Gita, and I will quote some verses for you. So, chapter 9, verses 27 and 28, roughly, they translate it to whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give, whatever austerity you practice, do that as an offering to me. 28th verse of the same chapter. In this manner, you shall be freed from the bonds of action, bearing good and evil results, seeking union by sannyas yoga. Okay, that was another yoga, but sannyas, as we have analyzed, is a result of the renunciation. So, seeking union by sannyas yoga, liberated, you shall come to me. Chapter 11, verse number 55. He who performs actions for me, with me as supreme, is devoted to me, who is free from attachment, without enmity towards any being, he reaches me, O Pandava. And then in chapter 12, verses 6 and 7, but those who worship me, renouncing all actions in me, regarding me as supreme, meditating on me with single pointed yoga, for those minds who are set on me, I become soon, O Partha, the deliverer from this ocean bound sansara. So, this is talking about the grace, the second verse here, right? So he himself will take us. God himself will come to us and take care of that last bit, that leap of faith, where we have neither the pole and we are not yet on the to the other side of that pole vault example. You may recollect, the grace of God will take us. And also Kathopanishad says that, so this is in Kathopanishad, section 1, subsection 2, verse 23 translates to that Paramatman cannot be obtained by sermonizing, nor through intellect, nor by listening to a lot of discourse. Okay, it is whom he graces that attains him, or the grace of God. So, repeatedly, our scriptures are saying that we should just do our action and then Lord will grace us. Now, the when we talk of Lord's grace, what is important to comprehend is that it is not preferential. See, Lord's grace is not for some set of people. We always think, that our neighbors are more blessed than we are, or my boss is better off, and we feel that somehow Lord is not looking at us, and we seem to be deprived of His grace. So, but actually, it's the same grace which is available to the entire humanity. So we also at times think that priests are the custodians and channelizers of God's grace. So we ourselves, firstly, should understand what is God's grace. So the point is, it is available to each one of us equally. It's the best comparison here is to the sunlight that we receive. So sunlight falls on the earth and it falls equally everywhere, right, on the area that is in the day portion of the earth. So just as the sunlight is available to all of us, it is up to us whether we want to avail of it or not. So many of us will be sitting with an umbrella, or would have closed the windows, or put dark curtains. We may choose to shade ourselves by putting, so what are we doing? We are putting an obstacle between us and the sun. So we are covering the sunlight by putting an obstacle between us and the sun, so the sunlight doesn't reach us. To enjoy the sunlight, what we have to do is that we have to remove the obstacle that we have put between us and the sun. So the grace of God is equivalent to that sunlight. When we put an obstacle, that I don't understand this, there's no proof that this exists, because we are not able to perceive God Paramatman in that entire creation. I mean, if you even look at a flower blooming, you will see the grace of God, and you will see God there. Some of us see, some of us don't see. So similarly, the wise ones understand that Paramatman is underlying reality that is omnipresent, whereas an ignorant person either does not comprehend the all pervading reality, or sees it only in certain places. So, in the temple or in the mosque or in the church, it's there and not outside. Uh, it's there also, and it's there outside. It's there everywhere. So, once we eliminate this ignorance of ours through spiritual disciplines, we become connected with that grace of Brahman. So let's move on to the last verse for the day, verse number 57. चेतसाः सर्वकर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्यमच्युत मत्पराः बुद्धियोगमुपाश्रित्य मचेतः सततं भवा. So the verse translates to consciously renouncing all actions in me, regarding me as supreme, resorting to yoga of discrimination, fix your mind ever on me. So let's take this up word by word. Chetasa, consciously. Sar karmani, all actions. Mai, in me. Sannyasya, having renounced. Mat paraha, regarding me as that param or the supreme. Buddhi yoga, or yoga of discrimination, or you can also take it as yoga of knowledge. See, yoga of knowledge, through knowledge, you sharpen the discrimination. So, Buddhi Yoga and Gyan Yoga to that extent are synonyms. Upashritah is resorting to, Machittah, mind fixed on me, Satatam, always, Bhava be. So, consciously renouncing all actions in me, regarding me as supreme, resorting to yoga of discrimination, fix your mind ever on me. So, let's chant it together. चेतसाः सर्वकर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्पराः बुद्धियोगामुपाश्रित्य मच्चित्त सततं भवः. So the previous verse said that while continuously or constantly acting in the world, take shelter in me. This verse is telling us how to take shelter in me. And of course, we have explained that me, when the Lord Krishna is using the word me, he means that he is talking from the level of the Paramatman. Now, see, we have not reached that level of pure consciousness, so we see differences in different personalities. So, whether it's Buddha talking or Christ talking or Lord Krishna talking, they are talking from the level of the pure consciousness. But we see them because we are not identifying, we are not completely at that pure consciousness level. So, we are seeing differences in personalities. So, that is why the word me here means God. Now, you may remember in the Jnana Vigyan Yoga chapter 7, we had talked about, we were talking about the various components of the subtle body, various components of our gross and subtle bodies. So, we had talked about the four components of our subtle body, the Manaha, which was the focusing equipment, Buddhi, the discriminating faculty or what thinks and analyzes, Ahankar, that was the I-ness, and Chit was the memory part, right? So, these were the four components that we had talked about. Now, here in this verse, the Lord is saying that renounce all activities to God. And renunciation, we have already covered in detail in the starting verses of this chapter, and how it relates to relinquishment or tyag. So that was, if you remember, were the original set of verses that we had covered. And when we talk about surrender, it means performing the activity for God and not surrendering the activity. That means not doing, renouncing the activity. So it means activity has to be done, but instead of it being focused on ourselves, we do it for God. So activity, we have been again reading from chapter 3 onwards, is essential for ourselves, for our body, for our upkeep, for our livelihood, for supporting ourselves, for supporting our families, to earn a living. So activity is essential. It is only that the direction of the activity should be towards God as opposed to be egocentric. So it is important that we consciously surrender both our ego and egocentric desires and actions. That means we continue to act, but the action is being done for God by thinking of God in and through all our activities. And the only goal that we have set is to attain Him. So, the surrender that we are talking, of in this verse is for that highest goal that we have set for ourselves. Now, to think of that God, which in one of the attributes is unthinkable, incomprehensible, so on and so forth, the mind needs a prop. And again, in the pole vault, and of course, devotion and faith play an important part, what we discussed in the previous verse. But in the final stages, that means when the same, we come back to that pole vault example, when the pole has to be let go, let off, we have to leave even the scriptures behind, because the scriptures will not go over to Paramatman, within that Paramatman. Okay. So we have to understand what is the right spot where the pole has to be left so that we are able to cross over. Now we are using the word buddhi yoga again in this chapter. Yoga, as we have been discussing, is to unite. Unite to what? That means we have been separated from something. So that is our true identity, our essence, our dharma, that we have disconnected from. So Lord Krishna is asking us to resort to buddhi yoga or gyan yoga. And buddhi yoga word has been used earlier in Bhagwad Gita, and some of the verses I'll quote for you. Chapter 2, verses number 39, verse number 49 of chapter 2, and then chapter 10, verse number 10. They all refer to buddhi yoga. So the intellect or the buddhi's main function is discrimination. This again we analyzed in detail in the earlier part of this chapter. So our buddhi should be able to discriminate the false from the true and fix ourselves on that seeking of that what is the ultimate truth. That is the buddhi yoga, or fix ourselves and our mind and body and intellect on that Paramatman while we continue to act in the world. This bit, while acting in the world, is very, very important. And just as Paramatman is all pervasive, ever encompassing, and so on, while acting should be, is also all pervasive, all encompassing as far as our actions go. So we should be completely attuned to that Paramatman in and through all our activities, or have a complete surrender and one permanent thought of that God only. So, with that, we conclude our today's session.